Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In last week's report, we shared with you regarding the announcement of the release of Israeli abducted soldier Gilad Shalit, who had been taken captive by Hamas, who is a faction of the Palestinian people who rules in the Gaza Strip, in June of 2006. An agreement has been made between the Israeli government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas, wherein the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit will be released in exchange for 1,027 Palestinian prisoners who had committed terror acts against the state of Israel over the years. In this report, we're going to share with you the reaction from various sides regarding this agreement. So we will share with you details regarding how it happened, in addition to the perspective of Israel, Hamas, the United States, and various European countries. To begin with, we are going to share with you that Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit was greeted by an ecstatic welcome from hundreds of his friends, relatives, and supporters as he arrived at his home in the northern town of Mitzpah Hila on Tuesday afternoon, hours after he was reunited with his parents and brother for the first time since he was abducted and taken to Gaza in June of 2006. Masses filled the streets in a carnival-like parade singing Havenu Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you, and marching with flags as the 25-year-old Shalit was driven up to his house for the first time in 5 years. Shalit was released from Hamas captivity on Tuesday morning and taken to the Israeli Air Force Base in Tel Nov, central Israel, shortly afterward. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Ehud Barak greeted Shalit as he arrived at the airbase, accompanied by an Israeli medical team. "Hello, Gilad. Welcome back to Israel," said Netanyahu. "It's so good to have you home." Shalit, who changed into an Israeli army uniform before a helicopter ride from the Gaza border, saluted the Prime Minister and then embraced him. A short time later, he saw his family again. Israel freed 1,027 Palestinian and Israeli Arab prisoners to get Shalit back, including many who had been involved in terror attacks on Israeli civilians. The deal had been contested by Israelis who had lost family members in the attacks perpetrated by these convicted terrorists. 88% of Israelis sampled approved of Netanyahu's decision to hand over the more than 1,000 terrorists to recover Gilad Shalit, while 63% considered the price too high. Asked if the agreement would lead to more abductions of Israelis by Palestinian terrorists, 82% of Israelis thought that it would. Next, I'm going to share with you a speech that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave regarding the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. "Citizens of Israel, today we are all united in joy and in pain. 2.5 years ago, I returned to the Prime Minister's office. One of the principal and most complicated missions that I found on my desk, in which I set my heart to, was to bring our abducted soldier Gilad Shalit back home alive and well. Today, that mission has been completed. It entailed a very difficult decision. I saw the need to return home someone whom the state of Israel had sent to the battlefield. As an Israeli soldier and commander, I went out on dangerous missions many times, but I always knew that if I or one of my comrades fell captive, the government of Israel would do its utmost to return us home, and as Prime Minister, I have now carried this out. As a leader who daily sends out soldiers to defend Israeli citizens, I believe that mutual responsibility is no mere slogan. It is a cornerstone of our existence here. But I also see an additional need, that of minimizing the danger to the security of Israeli citizens. To this end, I enunciated two clear demands. First, that senior Hamas leaders, including arch-murderers, remain in prison. Second, that the overwhelming majority of those designated for release either be expelled or remain outside of the West Bank in order to impede their ability to attack our citizens. For years, Hamas strongly opposed these demands, but several months ago, we received clear signs that it was prepared to back down from this opposition. Tough negotiations were carried out night and day in Cairo, Egypt, with the mediation of the Egyptian government. We stood our ground, and when our main demands were met, I had to make a decision. I know very well that the pain of the families of the victims of terrorism is too heavy to bear. It is difficult to see that those who murdered their loved ones be released before serving out their full sentences. But I also knew that in the current diplomatic circumstances, this was the best agreement we could achieve, and there was no guarantee that the conditions which enabled it to be achieved would hold in the future. It could be that Gilad would disappear to my regret. Such things have happened in the past. I thought of Gilad in the 5 years that he spent rotting away in a Hamas cell. I did not want his fate to be that of Ron Arad. Ron fell captive exactly 25 years ago and has yet to return. I remembered the noble Batia Arad. I remembered her concern for her son Ron right up until her passing. At such moments, a leader finds himself alone and must make a decision. I considered and I decided. Government ministers supported me by a large majority. And today, now Gilad has returned home to his family, his people, and his country. This is a very moving moment. A short time ago, I embraced him as he came off the helicopter and escorted him to his parents, Aviva and Noam. And I said, I have brought your son back home. This is also a hard day. Even if the price has been smaller, it still has been heavy. I would like to make it clear, we will continue to fight terrorism. Any released terrorist who returns to terrorism, his blood is upon his head. The state of Israel is different from its enemies. Here, we do not celebrate the release of murderers. Here, we do not applaud those who took life. On the contrary, we believe in the sanctity of life. We sanctify life. This is the ancient tradition of the Jewish people. Citizens of Israel, in recent days, we have all seen national unity such as we have not seen in a long time. Unity is the source of Israel's strength, now and in the future. Today we all rejoice in Gilad Shalit's return home to our free country, the State of Israel. Tomorrow evening we will celebrate the holiday of Simchat Torah, the rejoicing in the Torah. This coming Sabbath we will read in synagogues as the weekly portion from the prophets the words of Isaiah chapter 42 verse 7, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon and to them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. Today I can say on behalf of all Israelis, in the spirit of eternal values of the Jewish people, your children shall return to their own border. Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 17. Am Israeli High. May the people of Israel live. Next, the reaction from Hamas. Hamas Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh called the release of over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the return of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit on Tuesday a strategic turning point in Hamas's struggle against Israel. This is a strategic turning point in our struggle against the Zionist enemy, Haniyeh said at a celebration in Gaza on Tuesday evening, adding, "It was thanks to our resistance that we were able to release the land and the people." The Palestinian leader told the cheering crowd that he committed to two main things as part of the Shalit deal that were testimony to Hamas's dedication to the entire Palestinian people. First of all, the Palestinians released were from all Palestinian groups and factions, and secondly, the prisoners were from all parts of Palestine, Haniyeh said. The Hamas leader said that the different Palestinian movements left their differences behind, and for the sake of the brave prisoners, adding that the Palestinians released belong to a number of different factions, including Fatah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the PRC, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. The crowd burst into applause several times during Haniya's address, calling out, "Allahu Akbar, Allah is great." Earlier Tuesday, the Gaza Strip and West Bank gave a jubilant welcome to hundreds of the Palestinians freed from Israeli prisons. In Ramallah, thousands packed into the headquarters of the Palestinian presidency to greet prisoners released into the West Bank. President Mahmoud Abbas and Hassan Youssef, a senior member of the Hamas group, both delivered speeches in a rare show of national unity. "We thank God for your return and your safety," Abbas said, greeting the prisoners. "You are freedom fighters and holy warriors for the sake of God and the homeland." Gaza declared a national holiday and schools were closed. Hamas and other Gaza militant groups have vowed to seize more Israeli hostages for exchange until all 5,000 Palestinians still in Israeli prisons are released. Reaction from the United States and in Europe are as follows. President Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton welcomed Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit's release after 5 years of being held captive by Hamas, saying that he was imprisoned for far too long. "We are pleased that a long ordeal has ended for Gilad Shalit," Clinton said. White House spokesperson Jay Carney said that he knew the president was personally pleased about the release of Shalit, but couldn't say how it would affect the peace process. "We are pleased that Mr. Shalit is being reunited with his family. As regards to the overall peace process, for us, it's always about each side taking steps that make it easier to return to negotiations instead of harder," Carney said. The United States viewed the prisoner swap deal as a major setback for Fatah leader Mahmoud Abbas, chairman of the Palestinian Authority, at a time when the United States is trying hard to bring him to the negotiating table. Indeed, 2 U.S. officials are due Wednesday, October the 19th, in Jerusalem and Ramallah to once again look into the prospects of restarting the peace talks. British Prime Minister David Cameron on Tuesday congratulated Netanyahu on all those involved with bringing Shalit safely home and commended his family's struggle for their son and brother's release. "I am full of admiration for the courage and fortitude which Sergeant Shalit and his family have shown through his long, cruel, and unjustified captivity," said Cameron. French President Nicolas Sarkozy on Tuesday said it was a huge relief for his country that Shalit, who holds dual French-Israeli citizenship, had been released. Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister and envoy for the Middle East Quartet, consisting of the United States, the European Union, Russia, and the United Nations, said that the prisoner exchange deal should be used to restart the peace process. "I hope it also offers us a moment of opportunity, and not simply in respect of Gaza, where Hamas are presently in charge, but also for a revival of credibility in a peace process we really need to prioritize," he told BBC. Well, this concludes this week's news update for you, wherein we shared with you the agreement that was made between Hamas and the government of Israel, where Hamas agreed to release abducted soldier Gilad Shalit, who they took captive in June of 2006 in exchange for Israel releasing 1,027 Palestinian prisoners who Israel had imprisoned for committing various terrorist acts against the state of Israel. Until we do it again next week, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.